It's an Olympic-sized row that's got hotel owners and Paris politicians fuming. Airbnb announcing a 9-year, $500 million deal this week in London with the International Olympic Committee to partner for the forthcoming Games. Be disruptive, maybe the clarion call of believers in Silicon Valley innovation, but try telling that to hotel owners who would have to cater to the accommodation service that undercuts their business, they say. And to all those registered voters in the French capital whose rent has soared as owners pull from the market apartments for long-term lease in favor of Airbnb. Oh, did we mention yet? It's campaign time in Paris. Municipal elections are slated for March. The mayor's promised that if re-elected, she will even organize a referendum on the proper terms and conditions for Airbnb. More broadly, what's the future of the property market in big cities in this digital age we now live in? How to reverse a trend of a new kind of housing crisis where prices skyrocket in city centers, forcing all but the happy few to the periphery? And will the Olympics ultimately be good or bad for Paris? Today in the France 24 debate, the battle over Airbnb. And joining us from Biarritz, where the conference of the French hotel trade is taking place, Association President Laurent Duc. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Good evening.
Joining us as well, attorney Frédéric Vial. He's a candidate for the, how would you translate, Décidons Paris?
Paris should decide for itself, something like this.
Paris should decide for itself list in those municipal elections.
Yeah.
And you're a member of the committee that said no to the Olympics.
That's it.
All right. Thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Entrepreneur Vincent Ducret is the co-founder and CEO of the Hub Institute digital think tank.
Yes, we work around the subject of smart cities, on the future of retail, on a lot of topics around the Olympics also.
All right. He knows more than a little about the economics of the international Olympic movement. Craig Capitas, contributing editor at Quartz. Thanks for joining us. The France 24 debate on Facebook and on Twitter, hashtag F24debate. By the way, we invited Airbnb to join the conversation. They said they were unavailable. They did forward a statement insisting the games will, quote, bring very real economic benefits to French communities and athletes, leaving a lasting positive legacy, end quote. Of course, hotel owners see it a little bit differently as they gather, again, with Laurent Duc down in Biarritz. Emerald Maxwell has more.
It's a dream deal for Airbnb, a sponsorship agreement with the International Olympic Committee for the next 5 games, including 2024 in Paris. French hotels are calling it outrageous. They've been working with Paris on the planning for the Games, but are threatening to pull out in protest at what they see as unfair competition.
More than 600 hotels have been registered for the event. We have guaranteed rooms, rates, sales, conditions, and on top of that, there are accessibility and security concerns.
This independent Parisian hotel was looking forward to the Games, but now has concerns.
We're obviously not happy about this partnership. Airbnb has millions of euros a year to invest. We can't compete with that.
The planning organisation in charge of the Paris Olympics wants to reassure hotels.
This partnership was thought up with a more global remit. It won't impact the organisation of the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris. That organisation rests on French hotels, and we're going to need 42,000 rooms to accommodate international delegations.
Airbnb, though, will also be hoping to provide many of those from among the 65,000 listings on its site. Paris's mayor has also warned the IOC of the risks of the partnership. Anne Hidalgo has been clamping down on the home rental platform, which she says contributes to the shortage of apartments in the city and is a factor in driving up the price of rent.
Laurent Duc, let me read to you what the president of the Île-de-France region, Valérie Pécresse, said. She said Airbnb will be very useful at the time of the Games. We'll see 1 million people arriving in the Paris area. Hotels will be full. Airbnb will be an additional purchasing power for many residents in Île-de-France. So I think We need to find the right agreement with Airbnb. No wild hotels without norms, but no ban either, because people in the region must be allowed to host travelers to Airbnb. Do you agree with that statement?
No, not at all. Last Olympic game in London, you had less tourists in summer, the summer of the Olympic Games in London, than normally in London. The prices, the crowds, the difficulty of the big races or big time of the Olympic game make that it won't be that.
No, I'm going to interrupt you because we're having issues with the sound. We're going to try to fix it and get right back to you. But I got the gist of what you said, which was that the beginning there that we saw in London price gouging, and the experience of the past is that it won't be win-win. You agree with that, Frédéric?
Yes, I really agree with that. The hotel owner has right to be concerned about this partnership, because for them it's going to be really a severe competition. Already Airbnb has the capacity in Paris equivalent of the hotel, and there is no reason to imagine that is not going to increase with the Olympic Games. So they are very concerned. But my concern is not only for the hotel or for the hotel owner. My concern is for the people. As it has been said in your little presentation, wherever Airbnb settles, rent rise and speculation spreads. So we notice that today the center of Paris is almost empty of its inhabitants. So this is really a concern for us, and the speculation, the rise of the rents, and that there is something like 17% of vacant home in Paris, while at the same time many people are forced to move to the suburbs because they cannot find anything available, affordable in Paris.
This accusation that Paris, the expression the French use is that it's become a museum city, that the city center is very beautiful to look at, but nobody lives there.
Yeah, I don't share this vision, actually. First, we should agree that hosting the Olympics is a chance, and we bet for a long time to get the Olympics. And to succeed with the Olympics, we need everyone. We need all the stakeholders, and we need to use all the capacity we have in terms of rooms. So definitely we need all the hotels, but it's not enough. I've been to the Olympics in London 8 years ago, and I remember the price of the hotels and the capacity was a real complexity. So to really succeed, to host the players' families and all kind of people that will join the Olympics, we need to have a real big offer, and for this we need to extend the capacity of the city.
We need to extend the capacity of the city, but for this one event, and this is what Frédéric's worry is, that will people again be taking more rental properties off the market?
Yes, but you have two options. On one hand, you get more properties. On the other hand, you build hotels just for the Olympics. Which one do you choose? It's much more smarter to use, rooms and apartments of people in Paris who will be able to make some money, instead of building, ghost cities that I saw in some countries that were built just for the Olympics, and then, you will do nothing about it, and you will also invest a lot of money in all these kind of empty hotels. So it's in my opinion, in our opinion, we need flexibility, and we need to use the stock that is already available in the city. So we need hotels, and we need also new players like Airbnb. I just would like to add that if you see the big sponsor of the Olympics, you have Airbnb and you have Alibaba. And it's very interesting to see how the new economy, the digital economy, is starting to really engage with the Olympics. It's the first Olympics that include those players.
Yeah, these big sponsors are quite the notion at this time. Right now, Airbnb, one of those, I think they're called global sponsors.
WOP.
The Paris Games still looking for a lot of national sponsors. It's proving harder than first thought. power giant EDF signed on this week. You see, this is on the website of the Paris Games. So there you see the global the top sponsors there at the on the top of the fold there, including, as you say, Alibaba, and below there are just two of them for the time being. We saw last week, recently, oil and gas giant Total pull out, be over concerned by environmentalists, and it's proving more difficult than first thought for Paris to find the sponsors.
You know, look, the Olympics is a circus that rides into town on a tidal wave, consuming all. I've covered just about every Olympics since Albertville, all right? You have no idea what you're in for. And in a lot of ways, you're right. They shouldn't have come here in the first place, but they brought them in. So what you're seeing here is the first kind of ripples of what's going to happen. Now, you're talking about the Total sponsorship. Yet another example, the apotheosis of Anne Hidalgo's dribbling hypocrisy. Oh, we'll take 100 million euros from you for Notre Dame, but no, don't do the Olympics. They're not being proactive. What she should have done, had she thought about it, which I don't think she does, she should have called up Total and worked out a deal. How do we make it all green? How do we use Total to showcase the green here? But no, she's got to go snowflake. As far as what the hoteliers are saying, this is bad planning on their part. They didn't do due diligence. Airbnb was a local sponsor in Rio de Janeiro and Pyeongchang. I don't think anyone at the hotel group knew that. Had they known that, they might have done something to sort of fix this problem. Finally, the relationship between an IOC host city and the hotelier is logistical, it's not financial. And if the hoteliers don't want Airbnb here, and if Anne Hidalgo doesn't want Airbnb here, fine, pay the IOC $500 million to put up the athletes, give them all these extras, and guess what? The IOC would be very happy to take them instead of Airbnb. That's how the IOC works.
But are hotel owners like Laurent Duc right to be worried about competition here?
I don't think so here in France, because you're not just talking here about visitors. The IOC 2 years before, it's 2 years before the games, starts going into logistical deals with the Hotel Association, if it exists in the country, for the athletes, the sponsors, and the journalists. Now, what the Airbnb deal is doing is they're giving rooms to athletes and trainers well before the games, not only in Paris, but before the games and in other games around the world and in training facilities. It's a great deal. The Olympics is a very expensive roadshow. And you're going to see more and more eruptions like this as we get closer to the cauldron.
Laurent Duc, are you reassured by what you just heard from Craig Kopidis?
No, I don't agree on that. The point is, we are giving to the Olympic organization allotment of our rooms, better prices, big capacities. And at the end, Airbnb and the International Olympic Games, they've got a partnership for the normal guests. Which, sorry, I've got a flu today, but it's not possible to, in a hand, reassure the Olympic Games to have hotel, proper, well entertained, secure, safe. And in other hand, the Olympic Games have got a partnership with Airbnb. How are you going to manage with the wheelchairs on the staircase in the apartment in Paris for the Paralympics, for example? We're very annoyed. The competition of Paris was one destination because we've got the hotel capacity and we've got enough rooms in the area of Paris to cover the Olympic Games. And at the same time, Airbnb has got a partnership with the international organization. It's not fair.
Laurent, the numbers on tourists who come to Paris keeps going up every year. It's every year we seem to be breaking a record when it comes to that. Is Airbnb really a problem for you?
Airbnb is a huge problem for us, according to is there no transparency. Airbnb hides the amounts they're collecting. Airbnb don't give the address of the local tax they're collecting to the cities. It's a huge problem for us. It's an unfair competition. And everybody thinks that getting an Airbnb or short-time rentals is exactly the same as an hotel. Therefore, it's a service we give for the same price. We're here 24 hours on 24 hours. We are making the rooms, serving breakfast, which is not the case of Airbnb. So at the end, the only comparison is the price, and that's why we're annoyed.
Really, I believe that the most important is not only the owner of hotel. The most important is the inhabitants. That is my point. We could not possibly thinking that at the end of the Olympic Games, Airbnb is going to leave. No, of course. What is happening with Airbnb is that the owner of flat, the flat owner, make much more money with renting their flat than to rent to ordinary people. That is why we are going to have a museum city at the center with no inhabitants in it. And this is the point.
That's an important issue. But as far as the games, Laurent does have a point. But as far as the IOC is concerned, it's a real local problem they don't really care about. If Laurent and his association really wanted to do something about this, the only way to do it is on a global scale, not on a local scale through the mayor or even with us talking here. You get a global hotel organization together. They come up and they become a top sponsor or some mid-level sponsor to block Airbnb from becoming a sponsor. Now, they had plenty of time to figure this out. Remember, Airbnb was a sponsor at Rio and in Pyeongchang, but they didn't do anything about this because they weren't thinking.
Is there an international lobbying group for the hotel industry, Laurent Duc, that could talk to the IOC?
If I was, for example, if I was the general manager of a big hotel chain, will I sponsor the Olympic Games in Paris as the main sponsor is Airbnb in the world? I won't do it. You must remember, you must think that we partner of the Olympic Games since the beginning. And today it's like a knife in the back. Because what they're doing is just take the opportunity. You must think that the partnership they're paying is 5 times the price we are using a year to promote France International. 90 million euro is a budget of the promotion agency of the France abroad.
Then, Frederick,
and they're paying €500,000. And there's a proportion, and they pay no income tax in France, not at all. If they don't pay taxes in France.
Frederick then is right. They shouldn't have come here in the first place. They should not have allowed the Olympics in, because what the problem Laurent has here, and he does have a problem, and he has a legitimate complaint. There is nothing new here. We've seen this at every Olympics.
We're gonna have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with our panel. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're looking at the backlash against Airbnb partnering with the International Olympic Committee for all the Olympics through to Los Angeles in 2028. And they include, of course, the Paris Games taking place here in 2024. It's all happening just months before March municipal elections in the capital. We're talking about it with Laurent Duc, president of the French Hotel Trade Association, who joins us from where their conference is taking place in the southwestern resort of Biarritz. We also want to welcome back to the show Frédéric Vial, who's running on a list of candidates. Paris Decides. How would you translate it? Paris Decides. There you go. In those municipal election, you were a member of the association that advocated no to the Paris Games in 2024. Vincent Ducret, is the co-founder and CEO of the Hub Institute digital think tank, and Craig Kapitas, contributing editor to Quartz. We've been talking about how of the timing of all of this coming ahead of municipal elections. The Paris mayor herself putting out a statement saying by taking out a significant number of properties in Paris, Airbnb is contributing to price rises for housing and worsening the shortage of housing in the rental market, penalizing all Parisians and in particular the middle class, Vincent Dufay.
Yeah. No, what's true is we need to have a maximum of nights, of renting nights. You know, at the beginning there was no limits. Then they moved to 120, and now we are around 90 nights. In some cities, they've been down to, I think, 60 nights a year. The problem we have to face is we have more and more tourists and more demand. So we need to have a lot of different offers. Once again, renting an apartment and renting a hotel room is not the same experience, it's not the same products, and sometimes it's not the same audience. If we go back to the Olympics debate, on one hand, we may have a lot of athlete families who will stay maybe for the months. On the other hand, we'll have some tourists that will just stay for a few days just to see some games. So this is not the same experience. So we need everybody. And I don't agree. I don't think that we have enough room in all Ile-de-France to cover the need of the Olympics.
Laurent Duc?
It's untrue. It's untrue. We've got enough. That's what's part of exactly we had the Olympic Games in Paris because Ile-de-France and Paris had enough rooms to cover the Olympic Games. And we know that a part can go to renting apartments. We're not talking about only hotels. We talk about sport places where can receive athletes. We talk about residences that can receive athletes. Altogether, Ile-de-France is 20% of the rooms we've got in France, and 20% make roughly, we can receive a day 300,000 people. So it's enough.
Laurent Duc, you mentioned earlier how the hotel experience is different, of course, from when you are staying at an Airbnb. And we've also been talking about how to regulate. And the company insists it's doing more to make it a safer experience, to prevent users from getting ripped off. Here's one of their bosses speaking at that Monday announcement in London of a tie-up.
We made an announcement last week that by this time next year, December 2020, 100% of Airbnb listings will be verified, and we're working through exactly how that will take place. But you can imagine for the games starting in Tokyo through the next 9 years of this partnership, through all the winter and summer games, we'll have teams on the ground to make sure that the listings are what they say they are, and we have a guest guarantee to back that up.
First of all, Laurent's correct. Paris would not have won the bid had they not had enough hotel rooms. The IOC will tell you that Paris has enough hotel rooms. The Airbnb bid goes beyond hotel rooms. It's providing facilities for athletes, trainers, and families, not only during the games, but before the games, for training, and before games in other cities. It is a long-term commitment. And, I feel your pain, Brother Laurent, but you're not going to get anywhere on this because you're just a local guy going after the IOC. Now, I'll give you an example. The Japanese went ballistic. You think Laurent's angry? You should have heard the folks at Seiko, the Japanese watchmaker, when the IOC told them, guess what? Omega's going to be the official timer. They went nuts. And the IOC said, go away. And the Japanese went away because there's nothing you can do about it. And the fact that Anne Hidalgo is politicizing this for her own campaign is shameful.
Why is it shameful?
It is shameful
but this is what voters want. They want a referendum on it.
I might be a little bit Republican, just a nudge, but I'm on your side here as far as this thing about the Olympics coming to town. Everyone who was behind this bid should have known from doing their due diligence of past Olympics that this kind of crap was going to hit the fan the moment it came to town. And as I said, what we're hearing here about the hotels is just the first wave of what you're going to see over the next 5 years as this thing gets closer and closer. It's going to get worse and worse.
All right, let's listen.
I'm afraid I agree. I'm afraid I agree with that. Is that the first thing is that we have decided to go to the Olympic Games and to pass under the rule of the IOC. And even in France, we have some kind of which name Olympic law, which make France at the order.
Correct.
At the order of the IOC, and this is the problem.
Well, Frederick is absolutely right. When you sign a host city contract,
Yeah.
you are under the thumb of the IOC. And by the way, this is one of the reasons, classically, the IOC really likes being in totalitarian countries like China and Russia, where they're going again, because they don't get this kind of blowback, which doesn't do their PR machine any good.
That's true.
All right, they are going as well to Los Angeles, California, home of the Silicon Valley. The IOC president, Thomas Bach, he likes the notion of, as we said at the outset, being disruptive, as they say in the innovation world. Here's what he said Monday in London.
Airbnb is in close contact with all the cities, and I think it is quite normal that such a disruptive business then needs to settle in and needs regulation, and this is happening in a dialogue between Airbnb and cities and countries, as you have heard there right now.
Vincent Ducret?
I expect maybe other surprise in the next months to come.
What are your thoughts, though, when you listen to Thomas Bach say that?
He's totally pragmatic. We have now new economic players. We are in the digital economy. So Alibaba is a good case, around e-commerce. Airbnb is also very interesting about hospitality. We can expect maybe 1, 2, or 3 more big announcements with also all those digital players that are now global leaders. This is normal. This is how the world, is evolving, and people are expecting a new experience. So we need to provide those new.
When you
experience.
think back to 2012, there were 4,000 Airbnb listings. Things go so fast. There were 4,000 Airbnb listings in Paris. Today there are an estimated 68,000.
That high.
And it's the highest in Europe.
4 to
You could even
68.
show up the graph if you want. When you think about that, you're saying, well, that's just the way of the world. The ship has sailed.
No, we have to control this. As I mentioned earlier, we need to limit the number of nights, not to compete totally with the hotel business. So this is our position.
Definitely. And there is, in fairness, Frédéric, there is more regulation than there was a couple of years ago already.
Yes, there's more regulation, and especially in Paris, when the number of nights, I believe, is 120 for a year, I believe, something like this. And this is quite a regulation that made the mayor. But I'm very agree with the idea that the mayor could not be surprised of what is happening now. What is happening now is quite normal in the logical of the Olympic Games, and especially with the Thomas Bach at the head of the Olympic Games. And she could not say, well, the Airbnb is not a good partnership, and she has fight to have the Olympic Games in Paris. So this is a total contradiction between the fact that the mayor had fight for the Olympic Games and that now she's saying that it is not a good thing that we have a partnership with the Airbnb. This is a total contradiction. And now she said that she's going to...
But would you say that Paris voters themselves are conflicted? On the one hand, they're angry about the high rental prices. On the other hand, they're happy to have the games come to their town.
I don't know if they are happy. I don't know. How could we say it? There is no ever what
you heard Vincent Ducret say it.
Yeah, well, he could say what he wants, but there is no consultation of the people. Every time where there was a consultation, a referendum, a local referendum, the answer was no. And in Paris, there is no referendum. We have my organization calling for years for a referendum. We do not obtain it. And so now Hidalgo said, we are going to organize a referendum on Airbnb partnership after the election. This is a Santa Claus promises.
Precisely.
Santa Claus promises.
You raise a fantastic point here. Again, the city administration never talked with the Elysee Palace or the local bid committee when they made this bid. There was no coordination. And now everyone's trying to politicize it. Folks like Laurent are getting upset. And I'll guarantee you, I'm going to say it again. This is just the beginning of what you're going to see here. And the duplicity of our mayor is gobsmacking. Gobsmacking.
Why would you say duplicity, though?
Because she'll take 150 million euros from Total to rebuild Notre Dame, but she will not accept their money to be a local sponsor, which perhaps in some way could offset some of the other costs. Did she have a meeting with the board of Total to see how Total sponsorship could be used in a possible green way? Was there any discussion? No, there wasn't. It was just a big, fat, commissar. No, we're not taking your money.
Yeah, we are all here tonight because we are in the middle of the election. If we were maybe 1 year ago or maybe in 1 year after, it will not be the same. So
it wouldn't be the same conversation. But we have those municipal elections coming up in March.
Yeah, just look. Nothing happened in Los Angeles based on this deal, or nothing happened in Tokyo based on this deal. We are just talking about this deal in Paris because we are in the middle of the election.
Not just because we're in the middle of the election, because the problems with Airbnb, and they're not just in Paris. We've seen them in Berlin. We've seen them in San Francisco.
Miami.
We've seen them in many of major cities. New York City.
Anyway, I have to thank really, really deeply France 24 to make this kind of debate, because this is an important political issue. And of course, we are going to raise election, but this is an important issue which concerns Paris, and so this is a good thing. And so thank you to France 24 to make this kind of debate, because this is important.
The question of Airbnb didn't crop up because of the Olympics, though?
No, it's ongoing topics for months, and actually, Airbnb didn't invent house renting. It's like when we are hearing everybody, it's like Airbnb invent a business. Actually, house renting is there for years. They just are the number one, the global number one. So they have a very, very big inventory now. So now it's like Frigidaire, we're saying Airbnb for house renting.
And I guarantee you, before the local elections, we're going to have similar shows here on transportation.
I totally agree.
And a whole host of other issues.
Energy,
because the Olympics raise these issues when they come to town.
All right, but let's talk about transportation for a second. And to do that, we can look at the map of where the venues are going to be for the games. Paris promised compact and accessible games. This is the map. You can see the part that's in the lighter color there. That's the city limits of Paris. A lot of the events taking place in the northern suburbs of Paris, where there's the National Stadium, the Stade de France. And they promised in their bid that they would watch the bottom line. Now, if you live in the greater Paris area, Laurent Duc, you're thinking these games are good news because they're an impetus to the fact that it's speeded up the push to build much needed new public transportation, new tramway lines that were needed. Perhaps there'll be new logistics as well that will be built, and that the Olympics add a bit more of a deadline, of a push on all of these matters. What are you happy or sad the Olympics are coming to Paris?
No, they're happy to have the Olympic Games in Paris. It makes France in the highlights, and not necessarily Paris. We talk about Paris, but just remember that France applied for the Olympic Games. The city is Paris, and it's going to not to take place in Paris. It's going to be in the area from Paris, in the outskirts from Paris. So Paris is the destination, but the Olympic Stadium is not in Paris. All's going to happen outside of Paris. That's France is candidate. That you forgot that. Transportation in Paris is, just remember that in Paris there live 20% of the French people. So we haven't been waiting for Olympic Games to have transportation for people. That was the positive point of the candidate when we were candidates. I just want to come back for two things were said which are absolutely wrong. it's not 120 days limited. It's only limited on a private property when you're on your own place. But when you're renting a flat, it's unlimited. And the problem is that when you are in a living place, to have new neighbors every day, it's a problem. And the freedom of people starts when the freedom of their one stop. And when you've got flats where people are coming every day difference, you've got your dust in the dustbin of the wrong way. The door are shut strongly. It's not anymore neighbors; it's a consumer. He don't care what the people's living in the building. So that's the point we're fighting against.
Mm-hmm. You want to know the good news? The good news is there's nothing like an Olympic Games. It is the greatest show on earth. It is 2 weeks of sheer bliss, of meeting some of the most interesting people from around the world, going to the events, going to see sports that you've never seen. Mm-hmm. It is really a morale builder for the city. Where the problem comes, and this goes back to your concern, is called Olympic depression. And that's what they call it. The day that the cauldron goes out, a depression sets upon the city because you've had the months and months of buildup. These 2 weeks are fabulous, and all of a sudden the circus has left town and they don't care what they've left behind. And the problem that the city of Paris needs to be concerned about, and this is something that virtually every other city except Barcelona.
In fairness, that was part of their bid, Craig. They did say we're going to try to not make too many white elephants. Everybody's haunted by the lesson of Montreal, where they took them decades to pay back.
The Greeks said that. The Australians said that. You can go down the list. The point is to avoid these problems, particularly this one Lauren's talking about now. All right, and he's right, is you have to look to see right now what's going to happen, even this far out after the games are over, and be darn sure that your financials are correct and that there's going to be enough, say, apartments and housing for people, which doesn't exist right now. That's all part of the Olympic process.
My point is that people already no longer have access to their own city. And this is, for us, the most important point as citizens. And with the partnership, is going to be more and more important. And most of the people are driven out of their own city. And that is the problem for the benefits of the tourism industry.
Let's talk about that. Earlier this year, Paris broke through the symbolic 10,000 euros a square meter for property prices. And that's for people who own. When it comes to rentals, the prices have continued to soar. For a two-bedroom, the average is flat in Paris now costs more than in London even. There you see these are the numbers for 2018. Vincent Ducré. This is for a two-bedroom apartment. We call in French trois pièces.
Yes.
Your reaction to this graph that Paris has become more expensive, and that middle-class people are being pushed out further and further away in the suburbs.
Yeah, it's a statement. I mean, I would say a lot of young families they have now to live just outside of Paris. It's a reality. It's very interesting. All the candidates actually for the next election are working on these subjects. The big topics are transportation and housing, And
you work on smart cities.
Yes. And what we see, for example, we had some interaction with the IKEA lab. They are working with a new kind of buildings, very flexible, depending on your needs. You can, for 6 months, live in a one-room flat, then you have some friends and families, so you move to a three-room flat. You can subscribe. It's a subscribe service. So we have a lot of innovation coming around housing. We have also dedicated buildings for co-meetings, co-housing. All new economy is coming. The problem we face now is that on one hand we have people from all over the world that want to come to Paris. And we have very old flat and very old inventory. So we need innovation, not only in platforms like Airbnb, we need also innovation in new buildings and a new offer for more flexibility.
I'm wondering in which planet are you living, really? Because the problem is not innovation and not technical innovation. The problem is a social problem. And we have to cope with this kind of social problem. Why do you think there is some every Saturday in Paris there are people are demonstrating? Why? There is a social issue. There is a social problem in our country.
You're talking about the Yellow Vest movement.
Yes, that's it. We are a very rich country with a lot of social problem. We have to cope with this kind of social problem if we want to live in a democracy and in a republic. And now with this kind of policy made by the city hall.
So what do you do? So,
Happening?
Frédéric, what do you do? Because in the old days, social classes were in the same building, right? The rich people lived on the lower floors, and the poor people lived upstairs in the smaller flats.
We have to build social.
What's the answer today to bring those people from middle class families back to the city center?
Social building. We have to build
social housing.
Social housing. We have to build more and more, and so we have to spend money and to put money on this and not on Olympic Games.
No, we are talking about Airbnb, but you have a lot of players. I would talk about maybe we have some brand from the UK, the Generator. It's like a new kind of YMCA. It's very, very cheap, and you can have a room or a bed for maybe €20 a night. So there is a lot of different offer. You know,
one of the interesting things about the Olympics, it is a time when all sorts of issues. As in the ancient Olympics, there were poetry contests, et cetera, et cetera. And the modern IOC has tried to bring this old idea together where all kinds of social issues are discussed in the context of this great sporting event, something the IOC takes very seriously. This discussion tonight is part of that process. And again, why the process has failed at virtually every other city except Barcelona. It's because no one followed through on it to be prepared for what happens when the circus leaves town. This should not be a time for confrontation. It should be a time for people to come together under the Olympic umbrella, if you want to believe in the whole Olympic ideal, as the IOC does, whether you think it's airy-fairy or not, come out at the end with a solution.
Is it not too optimistic? Your point of view. I'm wondering, because you speak about the Olympic value.
The IOC does. I'm telling you how the IOC
I
thinks.
do not believe in it at all.
Well, I can tell you this. Having covered the IOC for many years, knowing Samaranch for all his faults and all the other people there, good, bad, and ugly, they actually did believe in that ideal. They do believe in that ideal. Unfortunately, they fail at it. Quite often.
This is very
and it's not just the fault, of the IOC management in Lausanne. It's the fault of the local organizing committees.
Yeah. I'm afraid I'm not agree. It's because of the IOC, but anyway, this is.
Is it not the fault of that the IOC is a behemoth? And
it is a behemoth.
It's this giant.
It is, as I said, it's going to roll into town here
David
like a circus on a tidal wave. It's going to overwhelm you, and you have to try and tame the beast.
One final question on all this, Vincent Ducret. You've just described for us these different flexible new ways of how the future might be. There's one thing we've not mentioned, and we should before we go. Airbnb has just reported an operating loss of $306 million. They say it's because they've poured a lot of money into advertising and marketing. But in the long run, with the housing market changing so fast, with the disruption that we talked about at the outset coming so fast, is Airbnb going to be around in 2034?
With what happened with WeWork, now everybody is, watching the news about what will be the next,
Who will be the next WeWork?
Yeah, maybe that IPO is not going to work.
Yeah, but the difference is with the numbers with WeWork are very different. So I'm more confident on Airbnb because they have a lot of, not only the rooms, they have a lot of experiences now in the cities.
Yeah.
But how could they be losing money when they don't even own the apartments and they don't?
They invest a lot in technology. They are investing a lot in marketing. So it's like Amazon. They used to, lose a lot of money for years, but they are still the number one. So
all right, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, so much more to talk about. and there will be between now and the municipal elections and, of course, 2024. I want to thank you, Vincent Ducré. I want to thank Craig Kapitas. I want to thank as well Frédéric Vial, Laurent Duc for being with us from Biarritz. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Thank you.